Meteorological spring has officially started, and so has the spring thaw. This week, we're seeing above seasonal temperatures, especially through southern Saskatchewan. But is that a good thing? We're going to ask David Phillips. He's a senior climatologist with Environment and Climate Change Canada, and he joins me now. David, should we be concerned about this blast of warmth so early into spring?
Well, Fiona, if I had my druthers, I'd always like it to be normal weather, just to ease in, like kind of maple syrup kind of weather, instead of this almost March heat wave that we're seeing embrace the province. We see temperatures in the south that are going to be over double-digit positive. I mean, double-digit negatives are probably more commonplace. So to see temperatures that are, as much as 17 degrees warmer than normal is. We don't know whether it's a concern. I mean, it's certainly going to melt thaw the ground out and melt the snow cover, but one doesn't really know whether this is a good news, bad news situation.
So what are the soil moisture levels like in southern Saskatchewan, and is there a risk of drought?
Well, I think that certainly if I was a grower or a rancher, I'd be somewhat concerned by the lack of soil moisture. Not just through the winter, the recharge season, but really since the last year. I mean, it's really been a very dry situation across most of southern and central Saskatchewan. I think the more dearth of precipitation during the last year has been more in around Regina and to the southeast of the province. For example, if you take a look at precipitation in the last 12 months since March of 2020 to February of 2021, we see totals in Regina maybe about half of what you normally would get. We see up in Saskatoon area, the central part of the province, closer to perhaps maybe 80% of normal, so that's not in bad shape. And down in traditionally the dry areas, southwestern Saskatchewan and Swift Current area, sort of in between, about 60, about 2/3 of what you normally would get. So we've seen last summer was dry. We've seen the fall to the summer to the winter has been particularly dry, and so I think it's concerning in a way. I mean, what this farmers really like and growers is to get that soil moisture recharging, to get back to give that top layers of soil a good drink of water. I wouldn't necessarily use the drought word yet, the D word. I mean, it's dry, but it's not necessarily drought. You don't lose your crop in March, and there's still time to provide some recharge of that soil. For example, let me remind you, even though it feels like spring out there, and we've turned the calendar, typically in southern Saskatchewan from March the 1st on, you get 30% of your annual snowfall. I mean, typically around 18 days or 13, 15 days with snow. So I don't think you've finished shoveling, plowing, and pushing. And the other thing, too, is that snow in the springtime tends to be sopping wet. It tends to have a lot of moisture, that almost like white gold for growers and ranchers because it's so loaded with precipitation. Not in December, January, February. It's dry. It blows around. It's like almost like soap flakes. But clearly in this springtime, it's got charged with moisture, and that really is good for the soil and any of the early seeds that are sown. So my sense is I wouldn't worry about it. I'd be concerned. But it's still a little too early to see whether the D word is going to be used this coming growing season.
Okay, we've talked about the D word. Let's talk about the F word.
Yes.
What about flooding? Any indications of that being a concern?
Well, I think the opposite side of the coin is the fact that it doesn't seem to be going to be a flood season, particularly in southern and central Saskatchewan. Now, I know around Swift Current they got last November a real pile of snow, but it was quite variable. It wasn't everywhere. And of course, it's been, apart from February, it's been warmer than normal. So a lot of that has actually melted or sublimated away. So I don't think it's an issue. So I think from farming point of view, you always worry about whether you're going to have a flood season. To have a lot of snow sitting on the ground and then to melt it quickly and get those spring rains, well, it might help the soil moisture, but it means it's a lot of the rivers and lakes, the ditches will be chock full, and that doesn't seem to be occurring this year. So I think farmers will be able to get onto their lands earlier than in some years, and with perhaps if the temperatures are going to be warmer, then things will, the soil will warm up, heat up, and that's always a good news. And the only element will be whether you get those spring and early summer rains will be the issue. So I think the flood word is not something that we see across the prairies at all. In fact, in many parts of Canada, we've had a kind of a winter and that doesn't seem to create ice jamming and snow melting problems like it has in some years.
So let's talk about spring. What do you think it's looking like for spring in Saskatchewan?
Well, we certainly think for parts of the far west, British Columbia, Alberta, they're going to be waiting for spring to arrive. It's always sometimes reluctant to arrive in Western Canada, but we think that what we see this week is kind of the pattern. Not every day. There will be maybe cool moments later on, but the cool moments will be fleeting. Weather is often very fickle and fitful in the springtime. You'll get winter trying to duke it out with summer, and we think this year our models seem to suggest from Saskatchewan right through to Eastern Canada looks like a milder than normal season going ahead. So my sense is it's not an aberration what you're seeing out there this week. Lots of sunshine, warm temperatures. I think that's going to be the pattern that you see. I mean, April is a cruel month. We know that winter can make a return, but often, Fiona, it's measured in sort of 1 or 2 days, not 1 or 2 weeks. And so but it's that snow. I think if even snow can be the scourge for the commuter, I think it's good for the Saskatchewan economy if we see some snow during March and April and maybe even into May, because it is the drink of water that the soil needs and the early crop would need, and that would always be prosperous for the situation. We also know that the wettest months are still to come. I mean, as it happens, June is the wettest month in Saskatchewan, and it maybe not as long as the 31-day months, but it is the wettest. And of course, that's when farmers and growers and ranchers need the moisture. And so the wet season is still to come. You are in your dry season now. The wet season is to come. July is the second wettest, and May is the third wettest. So May, June, July is when that wonderful precipitation will come. It's when you need it. And this year, as it turns out, we'll need it because we're into a deficit situation as we speak.
Thank you so much, David.
Okay, Fiona, bye-bye now.